Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let's Interview the Finalists for the Athenaeum. I'm going to keep saying that until it sticks in my head. More for me. Maybe it's for you
No,
too.
me too.
Athenaeum tabletop campaign. And as you can see, I am here with our latest finalist, Classic Gamer. Hi, Classic.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us,
Yeah.
as well as one of Classic's chosen selected interviewers, Dominic.
Hi.
Many of you may know Dominic from our most recent tabletop campaign. He plays Daretham, the lovable Awakened Darkspawn in the Dragon Age Ascension Season 3 campaign. So great to have you here, Dominic.
It's wonderful to be here. My first question for you is, what about tabletop RPGs appeals to you? What do you find fun about them, and why do you play them?
Oh, okay. Tabletop RPGs are awesome for me. I think. I mean, that's kind of how I started. Was with the tabletop, with D&D and Pathfinder, and I love the interaction, the face-to-face interaction with my cast, with the other players, with the GM. Although it's been tough this past year with COVID, we haven't had a chance to do that. We've all been on Roll20, but just the interactions that you have at the table can be just so much fun. And I love, especially with the systems you play, creating the characters. I love, I think that's what attracted me to, these games and the audition is everything is so character driven. That's what I love about that. And so as much as I can crunch like the best of them, I love the building of the character and the story and really integrating the characters into the world that I play in. So yeah.
If you had to pitch your role-playing or storytelling style using only 3 movies, what would those movies be? And feel free to go into some detail.
Ooh, my role playing style. I'd probably have to pick one of my favorite series, which is Lord of the Rings, hands down. I have to pick that one for sure. I just, in that sense, just all the fantasy. I love the stories, the character development. I love dynamic characters. That's one of my things. So I love that about that series. I'd go into Star Wars. Um, because I love the action. I adore the action. And to me, also, it's so full of character story there with like the father and son interactions. Like anything that deals with like family is huge for me. I love those stories. And then the last one, probably a comedy. I had to think of it because I do like my joking around. Probably a music. Oh, you know what? Perfect. Pitch Perfect would be another one. I love throwing in, like, if I were to play, like if there is a class or a character that's like me in real life, it's probably like a bard. I love bursting into song. So I need to have that musical element in my role playing. And so it's that whole fantasy with action and then comedy and music.
What do you believe is your biggest challenge as a role player, and how would you work on improving that?
Ooh, that is a tough question. Yeah, there are probably several. I think one of the little ones is sometimes I let bleed happen. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that term, where like you get too into your character, and sometimes to get out of it, it's a little bit of struggle. Like it happens to me in LARPing a lot, and so like we actually have to have a session to decompress from it because sometimes you're just so in your character that you have to like get out. And sometimes the reverse is true. Like something in my daily life will come into my game and it like completely blurs the lines of am I role playing a character or am I just channeling something in my daily life? So that's a little bit of a struggle for me. The other one is probably wanting to take the limelight sometimes. I think I overdo it without realizing it. And then other players have to kind of just give me cues. Like I try to get better at reading the cues and just like let them like, okay, time to be quiet.
You sort of answered this already, but I was curious if you had an additional answer to it. So, as you've said in your audition, that you are fairly well experienced when it comes to tabletop role playing. You also said that you've LARPed, which is actually something that I've never done myself, but always wanted to play. So you actually, in many ways, are also more experienced than me in that, at least. So my question is, as someone who is more experienced, that can be very intimidating for other players who either have never done this before or are just simply more introverted and quieter? And I know you were talking about how you struggle with like limelight sometimes. So in addition to that, what are some other things that you believe you could do to help manage that possible like intimidation that the less experienced players might have with while playing with you?
Yeah, and that's a very good question. And I thought about that a lot because I know that when you did your video, you were looking for people that had never played, and I've run, I've GM'd, I've played with inexperienced players, and one of the ways that I like to do that is I kind of integrate a little bit of shyness in my own character, so that they're not, let's say, the most loud or outspoken characters. So they still have to emote, they still have to channel a message, but they do it in a quieter way. They do it with silence sometimes, and that's a way that I've kind of managed that. And then actually for a while I played very serious characters and very kind of darker characters, and then I'm like, I need to change this up and be fun again. So that's a way that I manage that.
My last question is, I want to talk more about the world or the universe for at least the character that you're interviewing with today. And if we were to select you and your character, can you like sell to the audience right now who are watching, what is it about your universe or your world that makes it unique, interesting, and just plain fun for a party to jump into during the campaign?
Yes. This is a part of the audition, the request that was super cool. I love world building too. And so one of the things that I found, or so my inspiration for the world was like combining a little darkness with kind of like romance and humor and fun. And so the way for all my characters, I like to create like a music playlist. And so the way I envision this world is like if Evanescence was crossed with Selena Gomez. Right?
Okay.
So it's a little bit like a lot of feels, a lot of emotions, a little bit of dark around the edges, but it's still fun, like, yeah, it's still a pop song.
Okay.
And as far as visuals, it's still, I imagine a world that looks kind of like the Handmaid's Tale world, but it's a lot more, there's a lot of more hope, and I think that's what I really wanted to focus on, was like everything is around romance. So characters that come into the world all of a sudden are like, and I kind of worked a little bit on the mechanic side that I put on the Google Doc for you guys, is like maybe the characters become like these better looking versions of themselves, are constantly drawn to want to be in a romantic relationship. They're just seeking romance, and it's just maybe like things just happen to them, like fortunate things just happen. They're at the right place at the right time. Or let's say the world is typically very overcast, but something great happens, and then all of a sudden like sun comes through and shines on them or something like that. I always want there to be kind of like that ray of sunshine throughout the world that gives them hope, a chance to succeed, and they have to feel very like destined to do something, right? Like I feel like I'm the chosen one, because I try to hit all the tropes of the young adult romance. I really did. I went through even the bad ones. Yeah, I went through all of them. So yeah, I think that would be really fun. They just come into the world and we're like, yeah, we're gonna do this. Like, yes, we can win. We have to win.
All right. Let's go in my head, make some last minute adjustments for tone, and here we go. You see nothing but black. You don't hear anything. It's just silence, just nothingness. But then something starts to come to your senses. Like a high-pitched whining noise. Then in the background, you start to hear what you can register as explosions, gunfire, shouting, cries of pain. And then slowly you feel your body start to come to. You're sore and very much hurting everywhere. And your eyelids feel like they're made of lead with how heavy they are. You almost feel like your body's being moved, like you're being shook. And then, come on, wake up, you big super soldier. We need you here. And your eyes dart open as you see your second in command, Amanda Stone. She is an older, like mid 30s or so woman, brown hair tied up with a bit of gray into a bun. You can see she's wearing this more futuristic, like Kevlar armor with a rifle there. It's a bit mismatched, and you can see she's hunkered down behind this makeshift barricade, and you can see a bunch of your other men set up. You're in the middle of a battle, and your memories come flashing back. You're in the midst of rescuing Victor. You were able to get your militia together, and you found the location of the max security prison where Victor was being held. Amanda managed to gather the men, gather the intel. Felix managed to provide some good ammunition and weapons. And now you are currently in the midst of fighting General Edgar Jones's forces, one of the more ruthless commanders who has so far been fought to a stalemate at this point. You're actually held up within the prison itself, trying to keep his forces from overrunning you. And you remember waking up after you had curled yourself around a grenade that has been thrown into the group of soldiers, managing to save them all while knocking yourself out.
Victor is all what he thinks right now. He has to get to Victor. So being selfless is something he would do. Definitely, that is spot on. He comes to, and it's just kind of like shook back into his goal and his mission. That would be his first thoughts.
Mm-hmm. You can see one of the other soldiers shouts out, "They're trying to flank us on the left!" and starts to shoot off. Another one throws a grenade over here in the background, and then Amanda yanks you up, grunting with the effort as you are quite heavy.
Yeah.
And you can feel there's a bit like a blood running down your face in that perfect movie format where it just frames it even more beautifully. And you see there's a gun shoved in your hand, probably a big rifle. And she says, "All right, Frankie, we've been able to find out where Victor's being held, on the second floor in the interrogation room. If you can get there, we can probably spare a soldier or two, but we got to keep most here to keep Edgar's forces out, right? But hey,
Okay.
you can probably handle it."
Yes. He looks at the gun because he's not used to really firing one. He's more of a hand-to-hand fighter type.
Mm-hmm.
But he takes it nonetheless, and he has been practicing, so he kind of awkwardly grabs it just in case. Yes. So which direction is that we're supposed to go?
And she'll quickly give you directions to go into the building, up a flight of stairs, and then go through a few more hallways. And then she's able to look around, kind of goes and looks and say, "You, come on, go with Frankie. We got to make sure that Victor's being brought out." And the soldier comes up to you, and at first, you don't quite recognize him, but then you do. He's wearing a helmet. He's got pretty oversized armor on. You actually recognize his face. It's very pale. He looks terrified, but it is Henry.
Yeah. Henry, you are ready, are you not?
And he nods, very much looking his age more than ever, but also with a bit terrified determination in his eyes.
I know we've had our differences, but this is it. You agreed to help. This is for Victor.
For Victor.
And Henry kind of, in his mind, is still doubts a little bit. He's still resentful for what's happened because not everything could have been avoided in his mind. But he looks at him and says, if there's anything I trust is that you love him. That will help.
And you see, he doesn't say anything, and he actually moves away from your eyes. You think you get a flash of anger, but also hurt in them as you do. or as he does, and then you're able to go off. Go ahead and describe how like 3 obstacles or enemies come in front of Victor on his way to rescuing, coming in front of Frankie on his way to rescue Victor.
Yeah. Once Frankie knows exactly where he needs to go, he kind of takes the lead at that point and says, all right, you kind of follow me. He goes through some of the hallways. If there are any enemies that kind of come through, everyone else is probably taking shots with their weapons. Even though he has his first instinct is to just kind of bash right through them. And he'll take the hits, but he knows that he'll heal over time. And as long as they're not fatal, he doesn't care. He needs to get to Victor. So he'll push right on through. He will smack and punch through walls if he has to. Body slam them. He's pretty good hand-to-hand wise. And every now and then he probably, instead of actually shooting with his gun, he will actually use it and hit them with it. And then gets through. That's kind of his style, trying to get through obstacles. Mm-hmm. He will bash through doors. Yep.
And the last door you bash through is this set of double doors that seems reinforced, and it actually takes you about 3 tries. And then on the third, you're able to burst the doors open. You see there's a group of people, look like doctors or surgeons, or at least wearing that sort of getup. And you see tied down in the chair, looking definitely hurt, possibly a little delirious, is Victor. You're able to quickly go in and dispatch the doctors. A few of the men have now fan out to the sides, making sure the room is clear. And you're able to get Victor out of his restraints. But then you can hear from behind you, because you don't have enough men quite to guard your flank at this moment. You hear, "There's the freak! Gun him down!" And you see there's a group of men right behind. And one of them is pointing a gun right at your head, and you're really good, but you know that it's not quite enough. It's too close, the bullet will be too fast, you're not going to be able to dodge it. It's going to be able to kill you. And then there's a split second before, and that soldier's brains are scattered over the floor as you kind of glance to your left and you see his hands shaking, face pale, smoke coming out of Henry's gun.
Frankie kind of freezes and hesitates for a moment. Death and corpses actually is something that kind of triggers him. As much as he is in this battle, he tries to not think about death that's happening. And seeing Henry take the shot, it's this mixed feeling of dread, but gratefulness at the same time. And he just kind of freezes a bit. Henry, thank you. And then he kind of turns to Victor immediately and check to see if he's alive. Are you okay?
You can see that his eyes are half open, but they're in that dazed out way. He looks pretty delirious, like maybe there's been some substances in his system or something. He's out of it, basically. You're able to retreat to a nearby underground bunker and kind of hunker down while the general's forces fan out, unable to find you. And he's right now lying in kind of a ramshackle hospital bed. An IV, or whatever the word for that is, bag into his veins. And you can see that he's very slowly getting better. He's been delirious when he wakes up. And I imagine Frankie's just been sitting at his bedside for that whole week.
Exactly. That's where he would be. Very little breaks, very little sleep, constantly at his side. He's obviously very concerned for Victor. He wants Victor back to where he knew him, and he's scared of hearing from Victor once he has come to of all of the terrible things that he may have gone through, the torture. He almost feels like this bit of guilt that he wasn't there with him. He escaped in his own right to kind of bring back help, but he feels somehow guilty that he didn't kind of stay with him. So this is him kind of trying to atone for that. being with him this entire time, making sure that he comes to, and he's just dreading to hear anything coming out of his mouth. The only thing that he wants to hear is like, I love you.
And as those thoughts run through your head, you actually hear as the door opens, and a face that you actually haven't seen in the past week, Henry, walks in. He's in his like casual clothes now. There is still a gun at his side, though it's standard practice for all of your men. His steps are hesitant as he walks in, and he stands kind of opposite where you can see him. You can see his face as he kind of looking down at Victor. You can already tell that there's a lot of emotion on his face that he's trying to hold back. He's trying to act cool, cold, but you can see, especially in his eyes, there's anger, a lot of guilt, a lot of just sadness. And he starts to speak. It's soft enough that like a normal person probably wouldn't be able to hear it, but being a super soldier like you are, you're able to mostly pick up everything he says. And he just stares down and, I'm sorry. I never wanted you to get hurt. You know, I was your best friend. You were my first friend too. And in this crazy world, I thought maybe there could be a chance or something. I knew you cared about me, Victor, but I always loved you. It just hurt when you ended up loving him more than me. Sorry.
Henry, you're still his friend. That will never, ever stop. And everything you have done to get him here safe, I will forever be grateful.
When he looks at you, I think Henry always looked at you with almost this hint of disgust, like Frankie's something that's unnatural. And you can see that it's still there, but you know that the word he cut himself off from saying was freak. And probably not for your benefit, but for Victor's. He said him instead, not thinking of you as a object, but as a person. And as he looks up at you, you can see barely his tears are there, but they're not quite falling. He's barely holding on to himself. And you see a lot of anger as he looks at you, and you don't entirely know how much of it is directed towards you and how much is to himself. As he clenches his fists and just stares you dead in the eye and says, if you hurt a hair on his head, I'll put a bullet in yours.
Frankie stands very kind of confident at that point. You know, I mean, he's been there by Victor's side, but having gone through everything, he is in this for the long haul. And so he takes in Henry's words, but it's almost like they bounce off as much as some of these bullets have, right? These words don't hurt him. The him comment, anything like that, it's, you know, he understands that's more of Henry trying to release some of this frustration and these feelings, and he understands that very well. So he responds in a very kind of confident tone. I will never let anything happen to him ever again. That I promise.
And probably for the first time ever, you see Henry look at you for a split second, not as Frankie, the super soldier, not as Frankie, this quote unquote monster, but as Frankie, the person. His hand like reaches down almost to maybe grab Victor's, but he stops midway and pulls back, just as you hear from Victor, as he seems to start to wake up.
And at that moment, like his whole body kind of changes from being kind of poised and kind of strong and stiff to kind of more fluid, and he kind of bends down to Victor and kind of combs his big fingers across his hair and are you okay, Victor? Say something.
And his eyes like blearily open, and you barely even register Henry leaving the room. As you see Victor's eyes, still half dazed, but looking much more coherent, looking like Victor, with all that intelligence that is common in him, as he looks up at you, and you almost see a small smile go across his face as he goes, "Did I ever give you a halo, or is that new?" And you look up, and there's that ring light on top that's been shadowing your head.
You're good then. You're good. Thank heavens. How do you feel?
Ow. And he goes into like just based off what he's feeling, he like goes through like 3 fractured ribs or like, all that kind of stuff where he's somehow able to self-diagnose, even though he's not even seen symptoms yet. And he like runs through that half like sarcastic but clinical rundown of his symptoms, and then he ends up saying, "But I mean, happy."
So that means that you're okay then. Good, you're back.
Hey, how could I be upset if I see you first thing when I wake up?
I am just glad that you're finally awake. You've been asleep for so many days. And he kind of brings some water from the side table. It's like, here, have a drink. You're probably so thirsty. Here.
Yeah. And he would go ahead and take the water. And then as you set the glass after he finishes drinking to the side, you actually feel a very weak, but still with some force tug as he's grabbed your collar and pulls you down for a kiss.
And he goes in as gently as he can because he knows he is kind of dealing with a still fragile patient, and gently gives him a kiss on the forehead, then on the nose, and then on the lips. Everybody out there who is listening, there is always hope. There is always love. And all you have to do is reach out and grab it. Take it for yourself. Let me come with you, and I will help you find it.